and welcome to this meeting of the Council's Policy and Resources Committee. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to ensure members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meetings protocol, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Okay, item 1 is apologies, substitution and declarations of interest. I don't think we'll get any apologies or substitutions, so we'll just have a roll call before we go on to declarations of interest.
The following councillors please indicate they're present at the meeting. Councillor Armstrong.
Present in the chamber. I think this is working. Good, thank you.
Councillor Crowley. Present in the chamber. Councillor Law.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCluskey. Present in the chamber. Councillor McKay.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCormick. Councillor Maguire.
Present remotely.
Councillor McVeigh.
Present chamber.
Councillor Moran.
Present remotely.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Martin.
Just in relation to agenda item 4, there's the external organisations framework governance report. I'm a trustee at the Beacon and also have a close family relative residing in one of the care homes that I mentioned.
Okay. Elizabeth.
And can I also, for the same paper, the Beacon and the declaration that I make in terms of Stepwell?
Okay, thank you. Colin, could you just reassure us that we're all being heard? Yes. Because we're not, the microphones are not on.
Oh, okay.
Are we being heard on?
The microphones, it comes up through the white.
We're being-
It's not through these.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Right, so we don't need to use these microphones. We're being heard on through the white discs. Okay, we can relax then. Okay, that moves on to item 2, 22-23 Policy and Resources Committee and the General Fund Revenue Budget update as at 30th September 2022. And Alan's going to speak to that.
And convener Angela Henderson, who's on the call remotely, is going to lead on.
All right. Yeah.
Who is it? Angela Henderson, she's on the call.
Okay, Angela.
Thank you, convener. This is the usual revenue report that we provide bi-monthly to the committee. It covers the Policy and Resources Committee position. It covers the General Fund position, including the earmarked reserves. It gives a reserves update and also covers the common good. Basically, just want to highlight that we are still currently projecting an overspend. It's 2.592 we're reporting just now, and mainly that is to do with the pay inflation and non-pay inflation. Also want to just highlight in the report the reserves position as well is currently showing a deficit and is below the £4 million that is the recommended level of free reserves that we should hold. And also in the report we are asking at section 2.4 of the 2.5 of the report for the committee to approve the early implementation of the living wage that was recommended in September 22. We're asking the committee to approve this uplift to the living wage rate from the 10th of November. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Angela. Any questions or comments, colleagues? No? No. Okay, so are we content with the recommendations, including the early implementation of the £10.90 living wage rate? I think that would be obviously beneficial for some of our lowest paid employees.
Agreed.
Okay, thanks, colleagues. Right, that takes us on to item 3, which is the Policy and Resources Capital Budget and the 2022-25 Capital Programme. Is that you this time, Alan?
Thank you. Couldn't delegate any more of the reports. Thank you, convener. This report highlights £200,000 acceleration in the committee's own capital programme, but 12% slippage in the overall programme. The reasons for the slippage have been reported to the relevant strategic committees, but are also due to the supply challenges and cost pressures, which are reflected in the body of the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Al. Any questions or comments, colleagues? Don't see any. Everybody content with the information in the report, so can we agree with recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. Takes us on to item 4, which is the finance services update. Again, Alan.
Thank you, convener. This is a fairly wide-ranging report on the activity by the service. First, it includes the annual governance of external organisation report. This is, I think, the 10th or 11th year that this has been coming to committee, and Appendix 1 highlights a small number of cases where all the requirements have not been complied with. These gaps have been in the process of being addressed by officers. Appendix 2 recommends a change in the criteria to the identification of such organisations, with Appendix 3 showing the 37 organisations it is proposed to form the process for 2022-23. The report also provides an update in respect to the insurance fund. This is the annual report, and it reports on the activity for the year end 30th September 2022. The 10-year fund projection will be reported as part of the December financial strategy. The report also provides updates in respect to the rollout of the cloud, with a table that's appended to the report on progress to date or at the time of preparing the report, and highlights progress in respect to various welfare payment schemes, including the Scottish Welfare Fund and discretionary housing payments, both of which are under pressure, understandably, at this point in time. Finally, the committee is updated on 2 significant developments relating to non-domestic rates, on which updates will come to committee over coming months. I and relevant officers are happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Alan. Any questions, comments from colleagues?
No.
You in a hurry, Councillor Wilson? Go home. No?
I've got one. I'm just
Oh,
can't
Elizabeth.
can't believe
Oh,
it.
that's right. Can't do
Sorry.
it. Just wave like
I will
that.
wave. I will wave.
Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you. And my leg's kind of going on now. It's a process question about the external governance. I would imagine we maybe do things differently now that we're in a kind of having been affected by COVID world. I'm just wondering how proximate we are in terms of how we go about doing the governance with the organisations now, if we're going back to the way we did things before, or if we're still doing it quite remotely.
Alan?
To you, convener, probably the easiest thing is I can pass over to my sort of lead client colleagues. I see Craig Givens here from the HSCP that has the majority of the organisations, but also Ruth and Stuart, who have some important organisations form part of this process. If I can hand over to them to sort of advise.
Okay, Craig, you want to come in?
Yes, certainly I can speak on behalf of the HSCP. It's a combination of both is the answer to that. We're trying as much to do a good number of our governance measures in person, but as I said there, it's a combination of both. I suspect my colleagues are going to say the same.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Ruth, are you want to come in?
Yeah, just to say we're a combination of both as well, and also attendance at board meetings. So 2 of our biggest clients are Inverclyde Leisure and the Beacon as well. So we have regular attendance at board meetings as well as oversight of the financial structure as well.
Thanks, Ruth. Stuart?
Nothing to change, convener. We do both.
Okay, thanks for that. Concise as always, Stuart.
That's helpful. Thank
You
you.
happy with that? Yep.
I am happy. Thank
Okay.
you.
No other questions, colleagues? No? Okay, agree with recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, that takes us on to item 5, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2022-23. And again, Alan?
Thank you, convener. This is the usual mid-year report, which highlights that at the end of September, £7 million in PWLB loans were repaid early with a view to reborrowing at lower interest rates. The report contains the usual indicators and comparison with estimates. Within this, the report will be remitted to the full council for approval as usual. and is forming a key part of the financial strategy, which is in the final stages of drafting this week.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Any questions?
Yes, please.
Councillor Wilson, David.
This is the Treasury report, isn't it? At 3.3 L, Alan, our investments earned a rate of 1.31% during the period. That was lower than the bench rate of 3.39. What would you think the rate of return at the moment is, as a guess?
Alan?
Hopefully probably slightly more scientific than a guess at today's date, because I was just looking at it before I came here. We're getting about 2.8% on our investments on average. Clearly, after many years of stability, interest rates have increased markedly over the last 6 months in particular, and that is having a knock-on impact to the council's finances, positive and negative, but hopefully more positive than negative. But I'm trying to incorporate that into the financial strategy.
Thank you. And how did you know I was going to ask that question?
I think you could be there. I come along prepared.
I was surprised you actually asked the question, because the reason interest rates are going up is because the Tories have crashed the economy.
I have no need to bring politics into
Well, it was an open goal. You can't miss an open goal. Okay, any other colleagues got any questions?
Just
Chris.
on the interest rates, I noticed that the aggregate, I suppose, or the average interest rate on our has went up from actually down. If you're looking at what they call it in one case, and the variable rate is actually so both situations actually down from what they call it from March to September. I presume because of the mix of it, it's actually went slightly up. So I'm just wondering, do you think that's going to change long term with respect to it, and what do you think is going to be the effect on the interest rates we have to pay for loans in the long term?
Thank you to you, convener. The vast majority of the council borrowing is very long term, so you're looking at 30 to 60 years. So what is happening now doesn't impact on that, which is why you've got the stability. If you're looking at paragraph 3.4 of the report, you'll see the table, and as Councillor Curley said, there's virtually no movement over the period. What is being impacted is what the council is getting for its investments at this point in time, which we get significantly more than we did 6 months ago. And secondly, what our internal borrowing is costing the loans fund, which is significantly more expensive, what we charge to the loans fund. So they're the key figures. The vast bulk of our borrowing, the 180 million, which is shown in paragraph 3.4, is tied into the longer term. So I wouldn't expect there to be any significant movements in that over the next few years.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions? Agree with the recommendations?
Agree.
Thank you. Okay, give Alan a wee break, and we'll move on to item 6, corporate policy and performance update report. And Lorna is going to present that.
Thank you and good afternoon. A corporate policy and performance update report is considered at every meeting of this committee, and this version includes a range of updates, including developments in relation to the strategic planning and performance management framework, self-evaluation, new life expectancy data, equalities, and youth emergency powers in relation to the state funeral on 19th of September. The report also seeks approval for a number of modifications to the draft Inverclyde Gaelic Language Plan 22-27. Thank you, convener, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mona. Any questions? Yes, Lorna.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the life expectancy figures, which obviously is a bit of a mixed bag for the area, but specifically for the increase in women's life expectancy, has there been policies that's led to that increase? Obviously we went from the second lowest to the fourth. So I just wondered if it's to do with improvements that we've made here in women's overall health and well-being, or is it that other areas are maybe starting to decline further?
Well, that's a difficult question. Mona? Can you shed any light on that?
Thank you, convener. I will do my best, and I suspect I'm not going to be able to shed much light on this. As you'll appreciate, I think it is a very complex picture in terms of changing dynamics across Scotland as a whole, the COVID impact, and different pressures within different local authority areas. I would hesitate to give you a comprehensive answer just now at committee, but I'm happy to look into that a bit more detail and send some more information on if that's useful.
Yes, thank you.
I was going to blame the Tories, but we'll wait for the
Wonderful diction. Honestly, wonderful diction.
That's good. Did you hear that, Mona?
Unlike myself.
She did.
Okay, any other questions rather than comments? No, okay, agree recommendations. Great. Yep. Right, moving on to item 7, Inverclyde Council Annual Performance Report 2021-22, and again, Mona.
Thank you, convener. This follows on from elected member briefing that took place earlier today on the APR, the Annual Performance Report. This is attached at Appendix 1 for the committee's approval. As you'll see, it lists each organisational priority within the corporate plan, gives you an overview of progress made within the year, and then some more details in terms of case studies. There's also a performance dashboard for each organisational priority with 3 years of performance data. And the latest data for each measure is provided along with the status where a target has been set. And you'll also see a direction of travel and performance, both in regard year on year and over the longer 5-year period. And I should highlight, considering performance, it's obviously vital to remember that some aspects of the 21-22 performance may look different to previous data sets. In particular, we're mindful of the pandemic impact, budgetary pressures and employee resource pressures as well. Thank you, convener.
Thanks, Mona. Any questions or comments, colleagues? Pam, Councillor.
Thanks, convener. There's information in this that has not yet been considered by the service committee, in particular the social work and social care scrutiny panel. But there is information that I think is concerning, particularly I'm looking at page 83 or page 20 of the actual. Page 83 in our papers. I'm looking at the percentage of looked after children with a permanence plan within 6 months of being accommodated, and also the percentage of child protection review case conferences taking place within 110 days of registration. I think properly a detailed discussion about this should be within the social work and social care scrutiny panel. But I think this committee, should note that social workers change lives, and the children whose lives most need changing are those on the child protection register and those who are looked after and accommodated. So whilst I don't want to take up a lot of the committee's time, I think these figures, are a concern, and I just wanted to make that point here. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's perfectly fair points to make. Obviously, we did have the all members briefing earlier, and these were areas that were highlighted as areas of concern. And as you know, we're experiencing significant issues around recruitment in children's and families. So that is clearly a reflection of that. And you're absolutely right. These are the sort of issues that the IGB and the social work and social care scrutiny panel should be absolutely focusing on and challenging the officers to see how we can improve the performance in these areas. Absolutely valid to raise that. Mona, do you want to come in or bring any other colleagues in?
I would defer to colleagues with more subject matter expertise. Thanks, convener.
Okay, Craig.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in on that point. Yeah, we're aware of this, and we're obviously happy to discuss this at the social care scrutiny panel, and we can bring something forward for that in a wee bit more detail, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah,
thanks.
That's useful. Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? I mean, I think it is a useful report. I think it's a very well presented report. Yeah. I think the case studies do help. But there's no doubt that there's areas of good performance in there, but there's clearly areas where we need to improve. COVID has certainly caused some of the issues, and undoubtedly the challenges around recruitment are there as well. So there's no doubt that going forward, we'll be looking for improvements, and these are the sort of things that should be reflected in the various improvement plans and the new corporate plan as well. Elizabeth, do you want to come in?
Just to reflect, I think it is, it's extraordinarily useful. And I think the Pentana presentation is really good actually in terms of how we get things presented to us now. It's the best I've seen it. But it's obviously I'm Clyde Council's annual performance report, but I do think with my Alliance hat on here that there are things that we can reflect from this and take into the partnership space and say these are not things that as measurements in terms of the things that are going on in our community are the preserve of us as an organisation alone. So there's certainly things here that I would well, we're developing the new LOIP or whatever we call it for the Alliance. There's things in here that we as an organisation should be reflecting into that partnership space.
Okay. Mona, do you want to come in on that particular point?
Thank you, convener. Yes, certainly a valid point Councillor Robertson makes there, and there's we don't do any of these things in isolation. So there's definitely read across the work of the Alliance, and yeah, happy to develop that further as we develop the new partnership plan.
Okay. No other comments, colleagues? Okay, we agree with recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, thanks for that. Takes us on to item 8, Corporate Services Corporate Director Improvement Plan Progress Report 2022-23. Again, Mona.
Thank you again, convener. This performance report focuses on the corporate services improvement actions within the Council's CDIPs, i.e. the actions that are being delivered by Finance and Corporate Governance and Organisational Development Policy and Communications. The Environment Regeneration Committee and the Education Communities Committee have received separate CDIP progress reports focusing on the actions that fall within their remit. Full details of the performance at the beginning of October 22, including a service commentary, can be found in Appendix 1. Thank you, convener.
Thanks, Mona. Any questions or comments? Councillor Wilson, David.
Yeah, I would like to ask on big page 120, shared services with Western Bartonshire. I notice in here there will be a joint commission.
Oh,
Was that the next paper?
Yeah.
Well, then I withdraw my question then.
Your apologies accepted.
Thank you.
Right, you've given advance notice of that.
I withdraw it because I'll be prepared for it now.
Okay, Elizabeth, Councillor Roberts first.
Thanks, convener. So my question's on page 106, which I hope is the right paper.
Yeah.
For me, that's fine. And it's about the action on workforce planning, which looks, if I'm reading the Pentana symbolism correctly, as if it's going along in a kind of tickety-boo on track fashion. And I'm just aware that actually what that's saying is just about people doing a workforce plan. It's a kind of output action again, when actually we know that workforce planning is one of the trickiest things that we're looking at. We've just talked about issues of recruitment in social work. We know that there are other aspects of our business where there are recruitment issues, and so it's kind of odd for me to sit and look at the output action as being going okay when I know fine well that underneath it there's an outcome action that we're struggling with, and it's just that kind of that disconnect in the read across, if you know what I mean. And I'm not really a question; it's just more a kind of observation, really.
Well, that's helpful, but I'll bring Stephen in to reflect on that observation. Stephen?
Yes, thanks, convener. Yeah, Councillor Robertson's right. It is a complex area, and it is one that obviously Audit Scotland pay a lot of attention to when they come and audit us and workforce plans. So we do have an annual exercise with our services. We work with the colleagues within our services to look at what the skills gaps are, within services, and what the skills requirements are for the future, and also workforce numbers. So in terms of that analysis, we basically try and develop an action plan to address some of the workforce planning issues that have been highlighted. So there is absolutely, I mean, the outcome is we want to make sure that we're delivering services efficiently and effectively in the future. So there will be some inputs there around training and things like that, but there's also it's not so much just straightforward. We want to look at all service plans across the council There's certainly some identified needs which are consistent across the council, and we're putting corporate measures in place to address those needs. Some other areas where we're trying to provide solutions is working in partnership with other councils as well to develop solutions to address some of the issues that are highlighted. But you're right that some of the key issues are very difficult. Things we've mentioned around recruitment and selection, a lot of actions around that within across the service workforce plans. We do know that we have some difficulty in attracting certain professional groups, and also at the entry level to the council as well. But there is actions there, Elizabeth, and I think that we want to try and just make sure we try and build them together corporately and resource the solutions that we need. But it's an annual exercise, and we do bring an update to the Policy and Resources Committee probably around the workforce plans, and that's due to happen in March of next year. So that might be able to provide a wee bit more information on that at that time. Thanks.
That's helpful, thank you.
You happy with that, Elizabeth?
Thank you.
Okay, Martin,
Thank you. Just two quick questions. Firstly, on page 111, the draft communication strategy is due by the 30th of November. I'm just wondering if that's on track to go to the CMT. And the second question on page 113, just around the speed of processing changes in circumstances for housing benefit. That seems to have varied around the target over the last kind of year. I'm just wondering if someone could speak to that and whether we are kind of consistently meeting the target, or if there's a reason why it's sort of varying quite a lot around that 3-day target. Thank you.
Okay, George, do you want to deal with the communication strategy question? George is hearing us. If not, Stephen.
Yeah, I can come in. I know George is working away on this, the communication strategy. It is in a draft form at the moment. The target is to try and bring it to the corporate management team. I know he's basically aiming for that 30th of November date, but if it's not the 30th of November, it will be a week or two after that, because we are targeting the committee earlier in the new year. So it is in draft form and it's being progressed. So there's no major slippage in terms of that timescale.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Alan, do you want to come in on that?
Certainly, I can sort of kick this off, and Tracy Bunton's here to if I either get this wrong or miss something out. This is the same team that's been involved in delivering the huge volume of extra COVID supports that have been gone out. So the priority was to get the cost of living payments out. They're also involved in things like self-isolation support grant. So that's why their performance, which is usually absolutely in the top quartile, top 2 in Scotland, this year has slipped because the team's been dealing with that, but things are settling down now. Tracy, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yes, that's absolutely the case, Alan. I would also perhaps add to that the performance at the start of the financial year is always slightly higher, because while it appears to be slow performance against the target, the cumulative position at the end of the financial year is always improved by a large exercise that we undertake at the end of the financial year to process things like rent increases and changes to welfare benefits at the end of the year, which makes an overall improved position.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks for that, Tracy. Any other questions, colleagues? No, agree recommendations? Great. Okay, Alan's had his rest. Well, he didn't really, because he had to answer a few questions. So, item 9, annual update delivering differently programme. Alan.
Thank you, convener. Yes, this is the annual Delivering Differently update, which is the council change programme. And the committee added a number of projects to Delivering Differently in June. It is proposed to drop 5 of the projects which are either completed or now form part of the 2023-25 budget process, with savings proposals included. There is an update in respect of new ways of working in relation to changes to the office estate, which includes the proposed mothballing of the James Watt building from early next financial year. Either myself or relevant corporate team, management team members are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Alan. I believe Councillor Wilson might have a question.
Yes, thank you, convener. That's very astute of you. There's actually a lot of very good material in this report and a lot of very good exercises going on. The one I'd like to ask questions about the shared services with West Dumbarton. If we do come to a final decision, who would make that decision in December? And secondly, if it was decided to disband the shared services, how long would it take to disband the current setup? 2 questions. Thank you.
Okay, I've got the Chief Executive and Stuart as the sort of leads on that. So Louise, do you want to come in? And if you feel the need to bring Stuart in, you can bring Stuart in. Louise.
Thanks very much for yourself, convener. We have an evaluation that the first draft of it is due on Friday. It should be with us by the end of the month. And then it will need to go to the Shared Services Committee. It will also need to go to E&R, and if there's changes, it will need to go to Council for Council to make a decision. And then depending on what the decisions are of elected members and also of our colleagues from West Dumbartonshire, that will set the timeline in relation to it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from members? No. Okay. Agree with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay. That takes us on to item 9, the 2023-25 budget update. You have an addendum report to this report as well. Alan?
Thank you, convener. Yes, if I can refer to the main report, but also to the addendum at the same time. And the report and the addendum provide an update in respect of the 23-25 budget and seeks approval of a number of matters, namely the budget pressures totaling 2,060,000 are approved over the 2023-25 period. That committee note the total increase of 2.4 million in non-pay inflation in 2023-24, almost exclusively due to the significant increases in utility costs and contract inflation. And the committee is asked to approve savings totaling just over £600,000 as set out in Appendix 3. In addition, members are asked to note that the 15th of December special council meeting is proposed, and the letter from Mr Swinney regarding policy flexibilities, which is issued in the addendum papers, and finally the latest estimated 23-25 funding gap of £16.3 million shown in Appendix 2 of the addendum. I realise there's a lot of figures and a lot of appendices in this report, and I have to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Any questions from members? Elizabeth? Robertson?
I've got one, and I should say before I say this question that I missed the members' budget working group yesterday, so could have had the opportunity to ask there, but it wasn't there, and it may have been covered, so apologies if it was. Do we intend to make a kind of response, a direct response to Mr Swinney's letter? Are we planning that as one of our actions in terms of the series of actions that we have to undertake at this point in the process?
Well, we didn't decide to respond to the letter. I suppose that the letter was a letter to all council leaders in COSLA, so yep. That will be considered at the next meeting of COSLA leaders, and potentially there may well be a response on that. What we did decide was that we would look at the potential flexibilities, and Alan would bring forward a report to, I think, the next meeting of the members' budget working group to see what areas potentially we could look at for flexibilities.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, colleagues? No? Okay, can we agree with the recommendations across both? Agree. The report and the addendum? Okay, that takes us on to item 11, updating anti-poverty interventions 2021-23, and Ruth is going to speak to that report.
Yes, good afternoon everyone. As promised, this is the report brought back about the underspend that was emerging from the anti-poverty report. If you look at paragraph 4.4, that highlights some of the underspend and the reasons for those. And if you look at paragraph 5.2 and 5.3, It outlines the proposals for that underspend. So we're looking at £83,000 towards the doubling of the Scottish Government Christmas child payment. We're looking at £50,000 additionality to the Scottish Welfare Fund. £100,000 has already been discussed for the Warm Hand of Friendship initiative. £100,000 to help mitigate food insecurity over the winter, with delegated powers to myself for the allocation of that, and an additional £30,000 to IFEAT. We were recommending leaving some money in the kitty, not spending everything at once, and back further proposals on the usage of that, mainly because there's still a long time to go over winter, and we'll look to see what the outcome of the UK autumn statement might be.
Okay, thanks. Ruth, any questions, Martin?
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Ruth, for this report. It's obviously terrible we need to be doing these things at the moment, but it's good that we have the ability to be able to support people. I just want to ask a question, firstly about the Warm Hand of Friendship funding. How have the allocations of funding been going for that? Have enough people taken up the grants? Have we seen a good kind of level of applications to that fund? And the second is around the 100,000 to mitigate food insecurity, which will be very important. I'm just wondering if you can say a little bit more about how you plan to allocate that, how you plan to distribute those funds. Thank you.
Chris?
Okay, so the first of the Warm Hand of Friendship, yes, we've seen a very good uptake in that. It's difficult to anticipate whether or not you have an initial surge and then it will slow down. But last seen, we were about the £40,000, £50,000 mark for that, with some diverse but interesting projects coming forward. CVS are giving us fortnightly updates on that, and we will have to monitor it and see if there is a chance for it going over the £100,000. We would certainly bring that back to committee and look at that. But the initial feedback is it has been very, very welcomed by community groups. It's been utilised well, and it's really done what it's set out to do in its policy objective, and in getting people to think how we can extend that warm hand of friendship. The second, with £100,000 for the food insecurity, we've got very close working relationships with the food banks, and also we've just written out to a lot of the churches as well, to see how we could support some of the initiatives that they're taking forward. To be honest, some of it may be just buying food, because as the cost of living is increasing, or the increased cost of living is biting, then food banks are seeing less donations. So for some of it, it might be to actually help them get through the winter and support people, but also possibly to support some of the initiatives that they may want to take forward. For instance, I-58, the main food bank, is looking at itself creating a warm space where people can sit down in a more perhaps welcoming environment and discuss some of the issues they may face. So it wouldn't entirely be on food, but the intention would be to support the food banks in the different initiatives they take forward over the winter.
You okay with that?
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I think it would be useful in terms of the Warm Hand of Friendship. I think it would be useful to maybe get a briefing note out to members, all members, at some point in the next few weeks, just to give an update and the type of initiatives being funded from that. And I think once you're obviously clear about how the 100,000 is going to be allocated for the food mitigations, mitigating food insecurity, maybe again get a briefing note out to members on that as well. I think that would be helpful. Okay,
Yeah.
any other member wishing to come in? Tommy?
Yep, can I come in, please?
I bring you a wee second, Natasha. Tommy first.
Thank you, Peter. Just for Luke, as you're aware, the pantries do a significant amount of work on the food insecurity route, and although they're not mentioned in this report, we know they have limited funding. Is that something you're going to look at further down the line?
Ruth?
I'm really sorry, I missed Councillor McVeigh's question. I couldn't quite.
Tommy was asking if the food pantries could be allocated funding through this particular initiative?
At the moment, the food pantries have got the funding allocated to them. So we could look at the initial the additional 240,000 and see if we could possibly look at that going forward. But at the moment, they have an allocation of funding.
Yeah, thanks Ruth for that, but I think it's limited to 2 years, and I think we're a year into that. I'm just wondering if it's something you're looking at further down the line.
Yes, through you, convener. Yes, we are looking at that, the sustainability of the pantries, also the fair share subscriptions that we take out. We've got 2 fair share subscriptions that we use to help the pantries. So we will need to keep a watchful eye on not only our own pantries but the pantry movement across Scotland, how that's been taken forward. But certainly it's one that we remain very supportive of.
Okay, Natasha, Councillor Maguire next.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I just wanted to thank you very much for bringing this paper today. As some of my colleagues have said before, it's terrible that we're having to look at things like this, but thank you very much for looking at these interventions, and I think it's most prudent that we're reserving some of that money to kind of see what comes out of the budget statement that we're going to get hopefully later this week. So just want to say thank you to you and your team for all the work that's been done in this, and hopefully at some point in the future we won't need things like this for our constituents, but in the meantime, thank you for looking at ways that we can try to ease the challenges that they're facing. So thank you.
Okay, thanks Natasha. Chris, did you want to come in?
Thank you, convener. Thanks, Stephen. It's just concentrating on iHeat, my question, but I think it's also it's an anti-poverty fund. We can see here that as we're moving in this crisis we're having, we're moving more and more to mitigating existing poverty as opposed to trying to get people out of poverty, which shows you that the depths we're actually in at the moment. But we also have a mixture of funding within this fund. But I can definitely see a definite move towards the mitigation of poverty as opposed to getting people out of poverty. The sort of where we're at this precise moment in time. On that regard, I note the £30,000 for iHeat. I think iHeat is a valuable resource. It's been used a long time, and even before we had the fuel crisis that's affecting many people, the most vulnerable people in particular in our society. And I know that the ran out of funding for the £75 fuel claim corporate payments, so I presume that money is going to reinstate that. But I also just would like some comments from officers with respect to the advice that iHeat gives, because I've had 1 or 2 constituents get in contact with me to say that they've been in contact with iHeat. They said, well, there's no money, and that's just the end of it. Well, they were actually looking for advice from iHeat, so I just want to make sure that any funding stream also includes the continuation of advice when maybe the payments maybe because obviously there's going to be a very strong demand for these food poverty payments. That whenever if these payments do run out, that we still get the opportunity to get advice to people through iHeat.
Ruth?
Okay, through you, convener. So the money we're giving is particularly for them to allocate the payments, and we know they had a waiting list or some people who had yet to be allocated. So your particular circumstance may be where people had applied and the money had been used up. So I will look into that. We work very closely with our colleagues in HSCP with iHeat to look at the type of interventions that can be made. And remember, whilst this report is being considered by this committee, there is also the HSCP does have its anti-poverty funding. So we will dovetail with all of the initiatives there. But what I can do is take away as an action to look in at the type of advice iHeat may give, as well as the monetary amounts they give out. But I can see that Craig's got his hand up. He maybe wants to come in with a little bit more information.
Okay, Craig, you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. Through you, convener. It's just, I suppose, to just give a wee bit more reassurance. We have regular governance meetings with iHeat around these particular issues. So I've heard this today, so I'm more than happy to take this back and speak to them about the advice that they're giving out.
Okay, thanks for that, Craig. Michael, did you want to come in on this particular issue?
No, Stephen, sorry, no, that's no, I was going to raise something else.
Okay, I'll bring Robert in first. He's been waiting patiently. Councillor Moran, Robert.
Hi, thank you, convener. I mean, we're talking about the funding, and obviously the money has been allocated to different organisations. And I did bring up about the great work the churches are doing. And to that effect, I just wanted to pass a comment that I had a surgery up in St Francis Church in Monday there, and they're applying for the grant, and also Moan Church as well. So we've been very proactive in contacting the church, and I want to thank the officers for that, because there were very high praise coming from the clergy. The fact that they had been contacted, were told that there was a grant they could apply for, and I think most of them are going to take that opportunity to take it. So just to pass my thanks on. I know I moaned about it plenty in the past, but it's good to see that we are being proactive, and then we're making the funds available to who people will be able to use them, I have to say.
I've never heard you moan in my life, Robert. Michael.
Thanks, Stephen. I was just wanting to ask a question about the iRise project. I mean, we can see we've got an underspend of £275,000, mainly due to the fact that we've got a problem with recruiting of staff. But I'm just wondering if Stuart can maybe give us a wee bit more heads up on the good work that has been done, and where we are with the staffing situation.
Stuart, you want to come in on that?
Convener, through you. Councillor McCormick, as we know, iRise was a pilot project. In the early stages, it was very difficult to recruit staff, and it was also very difficult to engage with clients. And remembering that the clients who are going through the iRise programme have got multiple barriers, both to engagement and to employment. £275,000 is a large sum to write back out of the over £1 million that was allocated to the project, and the primary movement relates to underspends on staff costs and the number of participants who are progressing to employment. It is a highly intensive programme, it's a high risk programme, and it was also time limited. But that said, when we see the number of clients progressing into employment, it's very encouraging. Colleagues are just about to transfer the staff to employability services, and we're hoping that 14 clients will progress to employment, and that is really positive in my opinion.
Okay, thanks, Stuart.
Okay. Councillor Wilson, you wish to come in?
Yeah, just very briefly. My group's view is that if you have an underspend and you're dealing with taxpayers' money, is to return it to the taxpayer. But we are quite impressed with the particular use of this money that is going so much to the communities. And I echo what Councillor Moran has said. I think it's the areas it's going to here in the community, to people in the community who know what they're doing. So we'd be quite happy to endorse it.
That's very gracious of you, Councillor Wilson, I have to say. Thank you for that.
Well, I would lose a vote, wouldn't I?
Pam?
Thanks, Convener. I just wanted to make some comments about school-linked social workers. And it really relates back to my comments earlier on. I'm very much in favour of preventative work and early intervention. But I feel I have to make a comment about the best use of a very scarce resource, qualified children and family social workers. And really I would like to, suppose I would make a plea that there is cooperation and collaboration across departments about the best use of a very scarce resource. And I would also add the comment that from my perspective, it doesn't actually absolutely have to be qualified children, family social workers who would undertake this role, in my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that comment. Don't know, Craig, if you want to come in on that.
Yeah, through yourself, Convener. Yeah, more than happy to comment on that. We're obviously aware of that issue, and we are working very closely with Ruth's team around that. Ruth might want to come in on that also.
Ruth?
Just to say that this was always meant to be a pilot, just to look at ways of working, and looking at the early intervention through the mid-intervention through to the more crisis work, and absolutely looking at the suite of support available. And to be clear, when we say school-based social workers, they are still working as part of the social work team, albeit in an early intervention capacity. But that the initial request for this was at the request of, I know that some social workers had said if they could do more of the early intervention work, it would stop some of the higher tariff issues coming on, but absolutely understand we are looking at the level of the different early interventions that can be put in through the different types of family support worker, as well as the qualified social work team.
Okay, I think Chief Exec wants to come in as well, Louise.
Very much through yourself, convener. Just to give some reassurance, Kate is actually at the health centre with a number of the non-execs from the health board, so she can't be with you. But both of us have had many discussions in relation to children and families. She's went out for 5 assistant kind of family support workers on a temporary basis to see if she can try and bring in some additionality. She's well aware that the school social workers may need to be brought into the area team. And to be fair, we have done that before, and we've brought all the reviewing officers into the team, which impacts on the number of reviews that have been done. But Kate's focus at the moment is to try and stabilise the team. Members will know she's out for a head of service. We're interviewing for that in the beginning of December. And I know that it's one of Kate's priorities, because just in her personal development plan, that she is going to do a review of children's services when she gets a new head of service in post.
Thank you. Okay, happy with that. Elizabeth?
Thanks to me. I know that this being there, the school and social workers being there, kind of came almost at our group's request back in the day. And I think, I think it's a classic example of this is what you would like to happen, but you know that circumstances change and you have to be agile. I think what I would still be saying in terms of how I feel as the leader of our group is that if we can't get to the point where we can be the fence at the top of the cliff as well as the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, then we're never going to make anything properly better. So having preventative resource available as well as the acute emergency response, really, and the thick of it, resource being there is really, really important. How it's shaped, how it's resourced, the type of people who are in that space, I don't think we would be precious about. But I think it's the intention of having the kind of preventative spend as well as the emergency spend that's the important thing for us to do it culturally.
Yeah, I think the issue here is that these posts are meant to be additional resource.
And now they're not.
And if you've got a difficulty in recruiting, that creates a
They're
problem. So
exactly.
absolutely, and obviously, the proposal was very well intentioned.
Yes.
But if you've got a national recruitment problem with social workers, then obviously it's difficult to necessarily prioritise in this like this. So I understand that. Any other member want to come in? I was just going to raise one issue, and it is in the appendix. We are have been supporting the Taylor Bank Credit Union, and I think credit unions are an important way of supporting people to address the financial challenges that they have. I think it would be useful, Ruth, if we could maybe have a report looking at the sort of penetration of the credit unions in Inverclyde. And I know we have a combination of local credit unions and more sort of regional and national credit unions. And I don't know how easy it will be to get the information. It might be the credit union governing body might be the best source of information. It'd be useful to get an understanding of how many people are in Inverclyde are actually participating in credit unions, and then look at potentially what we could do to help promote that even further, because I do think it is a potential way that people can maybe help marry themselves out of some of these crisis situations. So maybe if we could agree that as part of the recommendations to the report. Okay. Thanks for that, colleagues. Right. Takes us on to item 12, acceptable use of information systems policy, and Martin Hughes, I think, is going to speak to that. Martin.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Good afternoon. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the updated version of the acceptable use of information systems policy. The council has chosen to update this policy to reflect the use of new systems across the council and applies to all council employees and elected members. The policy covers the use of internet, email, social media, use of video and audio conferencing, including Teams and WebEx, whether on council premises or by remote use. The overall aim of the policy is to set out the manner in which the use of ICT systems may be monitored by the council to ensure that systems are used in a secure and business-like manner. Thank you, Convener. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Martin. Any questions or comments, colleagues?
I love the use of the word defamatory.
Yeah. You've probably defamed a few people in your time.
Even a few times itself,
Is there a question? Oh, I'm not seeing her on the screen, unfortunately. What chat? Sorry, Natasha. You hearing this, Natasha? You're on mute. And the internet's dropped, unfortunately. Okay. Any other questions, colleagues?
Hello,
Oh, you're back. You're back.
Yeah. Just let me know when you want me to come in.
Come in now, Natasha.
Right, thank you. Sorry, colleagues, my VPN just dropped out like twice in a row. I had two questions. One was about page 165 and the other is about page 168 and to 169. My first one was just when we talk about employee responsibilities when not at work. It talks about comments and opinions that they post online during work hours or when not in work. So between that, at that point there and the point on page 69, which talks about not using personal laptops, personal mobile phones, personal email addresses, Facebook, WhatsApp to send personal information, I just wanted to check two things. First of all, are we saying, just because of the way the policy is written on page 168, that our employees cannot use personal devices to communicate their own personal information, or are we talking about not taking personal information out of the council or HSCP? And secondly, employee responsibilities on page 165 when not at work. Are we saying that hypothetically, let's say we have a teacher or member of staff that goes on a night out, whether it be work or otherwise, and then communicates via social media a view that we would not say would align with council values, would that then mean that a disciplinary process would be followed?
Okay, Martin, you want to pick those up?
Yeah, so through yourself, Convener, yeah, just to make sure I've understand both of those kind of queries correctly, does the first then relate to the kind of general use of, say, by an employee for use of kind of council devices for I think the example you used was taking information outside of kind of council use, and the second would be if an employee used, is that a council device or a personal device, sorry, to be used in a kind of non-working environment. Is that correct?
Okay, so my first one was under section 9, it talks about mobile phone use. It talks about employees must not use personal laptops, personal mobile phones, personal email addresses, Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp groups to send personal information. So it starts by talking about mobile phone use, and then it goes on to talk about the employee using their own devices to send personal information. But we've not stipulated whether that's personal information relating to their council or HSCP work. Rather, we've just said personal information in general. So I just want to clarify that we're talking about not using personal devices to communicate work information.
Yeah, well, I suppose I could pick up on that. Yeah, so personal devices then should not be used for council purposes. Council devices should be used for council purposes. The policy does provide for generally if there's kind of emergency circumstances or discretion towards personal use, then that could be permissible. But yes, then employees should not be using personal devices for council purposes.
That's how the Home Secretary lost her job.
Okay, my second question was just around employee responsibilities when not at work. Just with the way that talks about whatever's posted during work hours or non-work hours, employees being held responsible. So hypothetically, if an employee like a teacher, a social worker, a road sweeper, if they were to go on a night out, post something very inappropriate online, would that lead to disciplinary action?
I think for disciplinary action, I'd refer to Stephen. I see he's got his hand up.
Stephen and Ruth are desperate to come in on this one. Who's going to go first? Ruth?
I'll let Stephen go first.
Okay.
No, that's fine. I mean, through you, convener, yes, Councillor Maguire, you're absolutely right. There is always the potential, the actions by employees, well, using their own device, posting on social media, can potentially lead to disciplinary action, whether it's during working hours or out with working hours. I mean, it obviously very much depend on the circumstances and what was posted. There would be an investigation potentially, etc. But yes, very much so. We've got a code of conduct for employees, and that talks about behaviour out with the workplace. So yeah, to answer the question, very much there is the potential for disciplinary action to take place against an employee, but very much depending on the circumstances of the case.
You may not be on duty, but you're never, in a sense, not a council employee 24/7.
Yep.
Ruth, do you want to come in?
Yeah, it was just exactly that point, and the GPCS have a code of conduct related to exactly that as well.
That's great. Thank you very much, convener, and thank you, officers.
Okay, thank you. Any other member wish to come in? No, I'm happy to approve the policy. Thank you for that. Right, okay, we're now on to the section on the agenda, routine decisions and items for noting. So these are the reports that officers won't speak to, introduce, that we are open for questions, and officers are standing by should you have any questions. So item 13 is the complaint handling annual report.
No, thank you.
Bear with me a wee second, Councillor Wilson. Does anybody get any questions on that particular report? No, don't see any online either. Okay, moving on to item 14, Freedom of Information Annual Report 2021. Again, any questions on that report? No, don't see any. Okay, we'll leave the recommendation. Then we're moving on to item 15, Workforce Information Activity Report 2021, which was the subject of a earlier all-member briefing. Any questions or comments on that report, Martin?
Yes, that's one. I think it would just be remiss of us not to just ask the question at the committee about the item on page 224 on health and safety activity, and in terms of the causes of accidents. The top three incidents reported obviously related to violence, assault, and other similar incidents against our staff. I'm just wondering if someone could just speak to that and just give us a little bit of assurance around how we're dealing with that. I know that we encourage people to report this, but just in terms of how we can ensure a kind of no tolerance approach to incidents of assault or violence or verbal abuse against our staff.
Okay, I'll say three people want to come in. I don't know whether I should do it in reverse order of the hierarchy or not. Right, I'm deferring to Ruth. Louise has put her hand down. So Ruth, the first instance.
Okay, and so a lot of the incidents of violence and assault will be through schools, through younger people, and certainly quite often younger people with additional support needs. What we do is we encourage reporting of these. We suspect that there was an underreporting previously, so we weren't able to always react to the patterns. So when they are reported, they're reported not only to health and safety, but also to the head of service, who will look at any patterns and look at any interventions that can be put in or additional supports, or we will send out either the health and safety reps to do risk assessments, or perhaps the educational psychology team to look at if there are any triggers or any help we can put in. So actually, from my point of view, the increase in reporting, which we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, has been welcome, because we understand that it was probably underreported to begin with, and we do want people to be reporting these incidents, because then we can do something about them.
Okay.
I'll perhaps hand over to Stephen.
Stephen?
Yes, thanks. Through you, convener. Nothing too much to add to Ruth. She's kind of covered what I was going to say. Certainly, over 90% of these incidents do relate within the ESN sector of education, and the majority of these incidents generally relate to a very small number of pupils. So we have a number of incidents in Craig Marlock, for example. There is no what I would say is it could be down to developmental issues, medication problems, but our own health and safety team are very much involved as a whole team approach to this. Wherever there is any incidents, and Ruth's absolutely right, we always encourage the reporting, no matter how trivial these events are, so that they can be investigated and that we can take the necessary action to try and prevent similar incidents happening again. So that's all I would add to what Ruth's already said. Thank you.
Okay. Pat, with that, Martin?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, colleagues? Okay, we agree recommendation. Takes us on to our last item, item 16, which is a remit from the Environment Regeneration Committee. Basically, we're being asked to approve the social value policy, which was endorsed by the committee. Any questions or comments on that item? No. Can we agree? Okay, that's the end of our business, colleagues. Thank you very much for your attendance and participation. Safe journey home.